Welcome to Sparky Nam, a documentary about the causes leading up to a very controversial and misunderstood war, the Vietnam War. We start in 1874 in Indochina, otherwise known as Vietnam. This is the year when the French officially colonized Vietnam. French originally sailed to Vietnam in hopes to find rich spices to up their trade. Once finding it, the French soon developed social systems and an economy for profit. But shockingly, this did not benefit the Vietnamese natives.
While in Vietnam, French settlers established a capitalistic democracy where natives had to work long, hard hours in the fields and benefited very little from. Almost all of the crops or products created went directly to the French government and in their benefit. In 1904, almost 25,000 Vietnamese natives died just to create one railroad called the Hanoi Yunnan Phu Railroad. As the years went on, the French in Vietnam began to establish monopolies in the production of salt, alcoholic beverages, and opium. They taxed the consumption of these and even encouraged Vietnamese to buy their opium just so they could get more money. The French were living large. However, the Vietnamese were getting fed up. They did not like this oppressive French system, and a few of them would go on to start something more and break out of French control. We talk about that on the next topic.
After decades of oppression, a few Vietnamese tried to overthrow French rule. One of these men almost single-handedly created the spark that led the Vietnamese Communist Revolution. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the man, the myth, the legend, Ho Chi Minh.
Ho Chi Minh, born Nguyen Sinh Cuong, lived in the village of Hong Tru in Vietnam and was born in 1890. In 1911, he moved to France and worked as a cook for a French steamer. While he was in France, he met up with other Vietnamese immigrants and organized to attend the Versailles Peace Conference. He wished to seek freedom for his people in Vietnam, who had been under harsh colonial rule by the French. In 1920, inspired by the communist movement and the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, which we will get into a bit later, he joined a French Communist Party, and 3 years later, he eventually moved to Moscow. In 1940, during World War II, after Germany beat France, Ho thought it would be a good idea to strike while they were already wounded. Ho Chi Minh organized a socialist party, which is commonly known as Viet Minh or the NVA, North Vietnamese Army. After some minor complications, like getting arrested, Minh and his crew planned to attack France and take back their homeland, Vietnam. In 1953, Ho's army, the Viet Minh, attacked France in order to gain back their land in the Battle of Dien Bien Phu. Although the French had amazing air support and were more experienced in combat than the brand new Viet Minh, they surprisingly lost. The French only held the NVA for about 57 days before being very wary of jungle warfare tactics and the guerrilla army, and eventually surrendered to the Viet Minh in Ho's army. Next up, we'll be having Connor Harrington talk about more of this topic with the influences of the Bolshevik Revolution and the Korean War.
The Korean War, like the Vietnam War, was a proxy war fought between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The Korean War was the first of these proxy wars and ultimately led to the others. During the Korean War, it was established that the United States would do everything that they could to stop the spread of communism. In it, they destroyed the lives and the homes of millions of people. But first, how did it start? First, the Korean War was ultimately brought on upon by the separation of Korea, which occurred at the end of World War II when Japan was defeated, which was colonized in Korea. And so during this time, it was split up horizontally in between the United States and their allies and the Soviet Union and its allies in the north. And eventually there was a movement in the north where they sought to reunite all of Korea under one nation. And eventually the North invaded the South, where the US saw it as an act of, just aggression, which it somewhat was, but it was for what some could say a good cause. And they retaliated and sent in loads of troops in what ultimately turned into just one huge bloody stalemate where nobody won, like just millions of people died, and the country was just left devastated.
In summary, the Korean War helped inspire the Vietnam War, and they shared many similarities between them, one of which is the battle between democratic and communist ideologies, and another being the active funding and support by both the United States and the Soviet Union during their duration.
The Bolshevik Revolution in Russia led to the eventual downfall of the Russian Tsardom and the establishment of the communist rule in the nation. The Bolshevik Revolution began in 1917 near the end of World War I and lasted until around 1921 and was based upon the ideas of Karl Marx. The revolution was led by the party leader Vladimir Lenin, who then became the leader of the newly formed Soviet Union in the aftermath of the revolution.
The Bolshevik Revolution inspired many people, such as Ho Chi Minh, to challenge corrupt government leadership and establish a new people's government. It also was the first communist uprising of many, and its effects were widespread throughout the world, including South America, Korea, and Vietnam.
Yeah. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Vietnam, a documentary about the leading causes and effects of the Vietnam War. Our first stop, we go to. Okay, you know what? Keep going. Where's my pencil? Okay, let's do this. Welcome, everybody, to Vietnam, a documentary about the leading causes and effects of the Vietnam War. No, wait, okay, time.
Both the Korean and Vietnam Wars were proxy wars fought between the United States and the Soviet Union over the spread of communism in Asia. However, Korea was the first of its kind, and sadly, it led to the loss of lives. Wow, really? It's in between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, and it was particularly destructive as well. Millions of people's homes were destroyed, entire villages were destroyed, people were raped, maimed, anything you can imagine, tortured. It was just a terrible time to be, well, Asian. God.